How poor is my soul? Everyone will wonder at the vision of such pomp and deception, pleasure and restlessness. Thoughts, the most unconscious ones, are easy to subject if you're not strong enough to counter them. And Dorian was just a young man, a good, beautiful guy with good eyes. A picture by perfect threads and twisted ideas were sufficient to dominate an innocent mind, so much to bring the boy to make a sort of a deal with the demon, whereby he will remain eternally young and beautiful. We are talking about the picture of Dorian Gray, a deep and extremely complex work, testament of the inner dualism of the same author, Oscar Wilde. Real genius of literature, Wilde devoted his life to counter the respectability and hypocrisy that were hiding into the Victorian era, succeeding in imposing his eccentricity both in the way of dressing and behaving, despite the great disdain demonstrated by the contemporary moralists against him. During those years, the author made great works, which were fully appreciated only after his death, making him one of the greatest classical writers, as well as being the apostle of aestheticism. Son of a family belonging to the Irish upper class, Wilde was born on October 16, 1854 in Dublin. The passion for art and literature handed down from his mother permitted him to complete an excellent education, first of all at the Porter Royal School of Enniskillen, then at the Trinity College of Dublin, and finally, thanks to a scholarship obtained in 1874 at the Magdalen College of Oxford. After completing his studies, Wilde began to impose his ideas in Europe and America, creating a literary genre in which human feelings are the most important aspects, as well as engaging in very interpersonal relationships more outrageous in his time, that deeply marked his existence and art. It is not surprising then that the picture of Dorian Gray was the work that perhaps gave him more fame, being the closest one to represent his soul. In 1819, the author decided to write his only novel, a noir by the tragic epilogue that sees as protagonist a beautiful orphan young man, Dorian Gray. The famous painter Basil Hallward, shocked by the beauty of Dorian, decides to realize a wonderful portrait. The work is extremely similar to the subject that it represents, except for one particular. Dorian is a human being, and so he has a soul, whereas the portrait, even if it is realistic and perfect, has not a conscience. Sir Harry Wotton, a longtime friend of Basil, a cynical aesthete, narcissist, skeptical, and lover of pleasures, have a determinant influence on the protagonist, and, at the vision of the portrait, it reminds him that time will destroy his beauty. So, Dorian, attracted by his new friend and prompted by this obsession, wishes that the painted image of himself would age in his place. But when his loved Sybil Vane kills herself for his selfishness, the signs of his wickedness appear in the whole crudeness in the portrait. The beautiful picture will become an object to jealously treasure in the attic. No one had to realize the evil person that he was. Then, Sir Harry gives Dorian a book to teach him to enjoy of those pleasures of life that come from perfumes, jewels, and relationships with young people of the same sex as the female one. His love towards his eternal beauty increases tremendously, pushing him to destroy many lives. But the portrait is always there, to remind him how immortal is his soul, aging horribly and showing all the signs of the committed crimes. The greedy disgust of the boy towards his painting becomes so great to bring him to destroy the picture, forgetting, however, that it was no more than his own life. The inanimate co-star of the novel is the picture, which reflects all that every human being desires and that society suggests to its members, that is to say, the celebration of appearance, depriving man of every moral value and everything that, even today, torments the human soul. Have an eternal beauty and live without depriving oneself of the pleasures and luxury. But this idea of absolute beauty, proposed by the principle of the aestheticism, will bring the boy to the total destruction. In fact, aestheticism poses at the heart of it art and beauty, pleasure and a libertine lifestyle. The protagonist is the symbol of all this, as well as the book is the explicit manifest of this new mirror of express oneself. Through Dorian, his friends and his acquaintances, Wilde describes the aristocratic world that he knows perfectly and that he hates, because he comes from that superficial and incorrect background, succeeding in glorifying and criticizing it at the same time. The novel was firstly published in 1819 on a monthly magazine, and then, in 1891, it was modified, reprinted and published again, obtaining a great success, even if the reviewer penalized it. There are many films adaptations about this masterpiece, among which there is the one of 2009, simply called Dorian Gray, and directed by Oliver Parker. Even if it is completely different by the writing, I think that it managed to do justice to the real work and to make an impression on the viewers by keeping them in a constant suspense. Surely, the first particular that we can note is the closest figures to the main character. The painter Basil Hallward, his friend and confidant, represents the moral conscience of Gray, who kills him without pity, definitely shrinking his transformation. In the film, the role of Hallward is different compared to the book. In the first, Basil loves Dorian for the effect that he had on his art, while in the film, their love is represented like homosexual love by the painter, who is killed much earlier compared to the chronological order of facts described in the book. Even the painting has a different role. In the book, it represents the close bond between Dorian Gray and Basil Hallward, whereas in the movie, the work is exposed in the living room to show the talent of Basil. On the contrary, Lord Harry Wotton, exceptionally interpreted by Colin Firth, embodies the dark side of human consciousness, in this case the Grey Swan, leading him to a depraved and dissolute life. However, Dorian realizes that he doesn't need to be beautiful, because the good guy he was doesn't exist anymore, and his soul was tremendously harassed. In the book, it is also important the figure of art. In the novel, Dorian falls in love with a young Sybil Vane while she was acting, but she loses her talent once she found love. The boy lives there for this reason, causing her death. Whereas in the film, the reason why they broke up is the corrupting work of Harry. The scenes of the protagonist, who during his mysterious travels seeks beauty without telling the details, are never mentioned in the writing, differently from the cinematographic transposition that presents us a more libertine Dorian. It is in the final that we notice the biggest difference between Wilde's book and the film adaptation. In fact, in the last, the secret of the painting is discovered by his dear friend Harry, who, frightened by the depravity that the young man has reached, burns the picture and decides to close Dorian in the same room, who seems to redeem himself only when his destiny is already marked. On the contrary, in the original work, the journey of Dorian towards redemption happens throughout self-analysis, after realizing that he could not live anymore with an evil soul. In fact, the journey presented in the novel seems to be even more longer and tortuous compared to that proposed in the film, which is mostly focused on the psychology and dualism of the protagonist. Surely, for the exigence to shock the viewers and make more evident the scenes of Dorian with scenes of sex and murders, the cinematographic transposition brings us to hope that the life of the young man ends. Despite the numerous differences between the novel and the movie, Oliver Parker made a masterpiece that finds its beauty in the magnificent tragedy between the old neighborhoods of the Victorian era. The picture of Dorian Gray is a mysterious discovery inside the conscience of everyone, inside the demons that we have, and this leads us to ask ourselves, who are we? What we want from our life? A prison love or a sinuous hell? Dorian understood it too late.